Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the March garden checklist video. I do these each month just to go through the things that I'm doing in my garden here in Raleigh, North Carolina, Zone 7B. That includes my vegetable garden, my landscape with shrubs, trees, perennials, annuals, all of those things. I just cover what I have going on here and videos that I've either just put up or about to put up that you'll see these things actually happening. One thing about spring is it's a great time to plant. Here in the South, people say fall is for planting for woody shrubs, but there's nothing wrong with planting woody shrubs right through the spring. One thing I will tell you is we're looking at something like this Encore Azalea or this Purple Daydream Loropetalum. Both of them have actually been outside through the winter and they don't have any new growth on them. So these are perfect examples of plants that I would purchase and put in the ground right now. We're still in my area here, as you're gonna see this video, about 6 weeks before my average last frost date. So if I took a plant, if this azalea had 2 inches of new growth on it, or this Loropetalum had 2 inches of new growth on it, I put that out, I get a 26, 25 degree night, they take a major step back. That new growth gets burned off of them. So keep that in mind as you're shopping for plants before your frost-free date or your average last frost date, which you can easily look up on Google. Make sure that the plants are acclimated to outdoor conditions. Let's just put it that way. If you see tons of new growth on them, but I'm not going to discourage you from buying them because there's such a shortage of plants. There's so many new gardeners during the last 2 years that I still think we're going to have a shortage of plants for a while. So maybe you still grab it, you bring it home, but you don't put it in the ground, and then you can take it in and out on the coldest nights. Don't leave it inside though. Take it outside on the warm days because you'll get lots of those between now and our frost-free date. So there you go. That's my thinking on shrubs. I got a few mail order plants that I did in an unboxing video from Plant Delights. I got an epimedium that's clearly been in the house because it's got some flowers on it, where my epimedium in the front yard is still off-colored, has the winter look. So this one, I'm just leaving it in a container. I'm gonna bring it in on nights that's below freezing. I'm gonna have it outdoors on days that it's, cold is fine, just not below freezing. I got an agave, and these are marginally hardy in my area anyway, so I'm gonna do the same thing with that. I'm sure it came out of a house and it was winter protected. So, that's how I go about thinking about, I wanna acquire them, but the only ones that are going to go in the ground have been acclimated to the outdoors. Summer bulbs are available now. So that's going to be dahlias, elephant ears, lots of things are available right now to acquire that don't necessarily go in the ground. I'm going to do a dahlia jumpstart video. I did a video on this last year where I'll put my dahlias in a container and get them started, but I won't put them in the ground too early. This allows me to get a little bit of a jump start on them, but they keep them mobile so I can bring them indoors on super cold nights. Two other summer bulbs or tubers that came to mind are Calla Lilies and caladiums. Those are also going to be available with the dahlias and the elephant ears. Go ahead and buy them, but just kind of keep them inside and then plant them out after your frost-free date, or you can follow along with the video I'm going to do on the dahlias and jump start all of those things. Get them going, but leave them mobile to come in and out of the house. You'll see asparagus available now. You'll see seed potatoes available, bare root roses, bare root fruit trees. Most of that stuff can go in the ground. I just cut up my potatoes in a video a few days ago. Typically potatoes can go in about 3 weeks before your average last frost date. So here in the next week or so, my potatoes will go in. There'll be a video for that. One thing that gets kind of tricky here, again, my average last frost date being around the 15th of April. Some people will say the 10th and some people say the 25th. But somewhere in there is my average last frost date. That's 6 weeks from the time you're seeing this video again. And between now and then, I will see lots of summer flowering annuals available. So things like begonias and impatiens and lots of things, including hanging baskets. Hold off buying those things. You don't want to get a jump start on something that you're going to have to, if you put impatiens in the ground, begonias in the ground, the soil is cold, first of all, so you're not really going to get any growth out of them anyway, and you're going to have to constantly be protecting them. I've got my pansies here, which will last until May, looking fantastic, and then I'll flip out to my summer annuals. But again, you'll see those things being sold early in your area for sure. In the next couple weeks, I'll be planting my cool season vegetables into my garden space. I put down a layer of compost in a video maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, something like that. And then about 2.5 weeks or so ago, I started my cool season vegetables. That's like broccoli and lettuce and kohlrabi and some collards and a few other things. I have a brief window here in the spring where it's cool enough to grow some of those things. And again, I've recomposted the space. It's ready to go. If you're planning on doing those things at this point, you probably need to look for plants, and the plants would be available now at garden centers, box stores, that kind of thing. Probably a little too late to do some of those from seed, especially here in the South. If you're in like zone 5 or 6, you can still do them from seed. And a lot of those things will last through the summer for you guys where it's cooler in the North. But here in the South, I have a brief window where I can grow those cool season leafy kind of vegetables in the spring and again in the fall. And so you'll see those going in the ground. And then I'm already started some of my summer annual seeds, my summer perennial seeds, some perennials that I do from seed that I treat as annuals, and then some of my summer vegetable seeds, just peppers so far. It's the only one that needs about 8 weeks before it gets transplanted into the ground. I'll link one of those videos up here in the corner if you're watching, and that way you can see how I go about starting my seeds. I try not to start them too early. It's pretty clear on the back of the package how much time you need between starting a seed and it going in the ground, and I just back up from my frost-free date. I got a big giant load of wood chips out here on the driveway I'll talk more about in the video in just a minute, but some of them are back here around the back of the vegetable garden. When I do my potatoes in grow bags, they're going to sit on top of these wood chips. It'll just give them some drainage from the bottom of those bags. I don't like to put those bags directly on the ground. These wood chips will break down during this season, and they will be my compost in the fall when I recompost the garden at that point. And then I'll just repeat this process. I can get free wood chips, or I can chip things up in my own landscape and use them. Also, in between the rows of vegetables in the garden space here, I will also use wood chips as well. And again, those will break down, become my compost in between each flip out of my spring and summer vegetables. So let's talk about herbs real quick. If you want to do dill and cilantro, the sooner the better. Those are cool season herbs. They will burn out in the summertime here in my area in the South. So this is kind of peak time to be doing those. And you can find plants on them at this point. You can do a lot of your perennial herbs from seed, or you can buy them as plants here in the spring. But just as an example of that, I've got thyme growing, and there's lots of different thymes. They're decorative as well. They're actually pretty nice ground covers. I've got sorrel in that space. I've got mint, and I encourage you to use mint in a container. I'm going to actually pull this out of a container and refresh this in the next few weeks, but you can see how much it was used last season. There's not much left on it, but use it in a container, otherwise it will take over your garden. I've got a rosemary here, actually a better looking rosemary in the back. This one was worked over pretty hard last year. Parsley here coming back. There's sage. I've got some oregano over here, another sorrel, and there's some bronze fennel as well on its way back at this point. And so this has kind of become my designated perennial herb area. But if you want to save some money and do these from seeds, you can. You only have to do it once. Once you have them in your landscape, you're good to go on these. Or again, you can just buy one plant on something like thyme, and you put it in the ground. Keep it out here on like a bed edge like this, and just let it creep along, in front of other things. You'll have it forever. So like I've tried to get across in this video up until now, early March is too early for a lot of things, but it's definitely not too early to be building new bed spaces, creating new spaces. And the way I go about that, and the way I went about that in this landscape up until this point, is I've added compost initially to the bare ground, and then I've put wood chips on top of that, and I'll show you the wood chips in just a second, and waited a few months, and it's basically, it becomes fuel almost. Those wood chips, with that little layer of humus on the ground from the compost, and the wood chips on top of that, they break down super fast, and they create a layer of humus on the top that is just fantastic. And all of my stuff just hit the ground running immediately in this landscape project. I got a couple bags from Soil Cube. This is for my vegetable garden, for my grow bags, for my potatoes, for new spaces that I'm creating in the landscape. you may have a local municipal source for compost. In Raleigh here, they collect all the leaves and sticks and everything, and then compost those. So those are available in an inexpensive way. You can get bagged compost, whatever you want to get. I do like the Soil Cube product, and if you're in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, it's available to you, and they just drop it off in a bag. And I think it's discounted here from through March, and I have a link down below if you're interested. Not trying to sell you anything. Again, there's lots of ways to acquire probably less expensive compost, but this is a great product, and I've used it throughout this entire project. The next thing I've got going on here in late February, early March, is I'm putting down a layer of triple shredded hardwood mulch over top of my existing beds. And I left the leaves in the fall. If you've been following along with the channel, I just left all the leaves in place. This is basically a small cap that I'm putting over the leaves so that my beds are more decorative during this season. It's, you can see where it's not finished over here. So I'm in the process of doing that. And I like to use triple shredded hardwood mulch. It's just literally the bark off of hardwood trees that's been shredded 3 times. And then the next pile, a giant pile of wood chips here. And again, I'm using wood chips in new spaces. So I'm gaining some space on the back of the property back here that will have the wood chips put down. You saw where I had put them around the vegetable garden. I'm using them for my back garden paths because it was free. You can use the Chip Drop website and get on a list. And if you have local guys cutting down trees, saves them time and money from driving wood chips off to some dump to dump them. They'll just bring them directly to your house. Took me about 3 days this time to get them. Sometimes it can take a month, but know when you sign up for it that you're ready for them. It's best to put them on a hard surface like this because they're easy to move that way. But again, I have a video coming out on why I use wood chips and where and all those things, and some additional information coming up. I put up 2 very specific pruning videos during the month of February, and then I put up a tour video a few days ago, and it had more pruning in it. So I think there's 3 videos in February talking about pruning. You have to be careful with what you're pruning this time of year, because if you're pruning any of the early spring or mid-spring flowering shrubs, even some of the early summer ones, then you'd be pruning off flowers. So you really need to know what you have. But there are things that you can be pruning this time of year, and there's some things that you can be hard pruning this time of year if you need to really lower the height on something. All of my butterfly bushes have been cut back. I think there's 4 or 5 of them in the landscape. My hydrangea paniculata has been cut back, but you have to be careful pruning other hydrangeas. So you can prune hydrangea paniculatas and hydrangea arborescents, but not macrophylla. So again, know what you have. If you don't know the plant, but you know it's a flowering plant, or you moved into a new house and you don't know what you have, just wait until after they flower in order to prune them, and you'll be okay. But if you do know what you have, and it's a late summer flowering thing, or it's something that doesn't flower, like these boxwoods do flower, but the flowers are insignificant. We're not growing them for flowers. You can prune those. This American Beautyberry that's beside me, I'm trying to control the height at which it gets to every year, and it'll grow about 3 feet every year. So I'm pruning it down to the same height every winter. By pruning it like this, I'm going to create some suckering around the base. And if you've lived with shrubs for any period of time, you know what I mean. They will try to sucker. So same with crepe myrtles. Crepe myrtles that get pruned a lot, sucker a lot. This is a great time of year to be pruning those suckers out, because I can get under here easy and I can see everything. So getting underneath your plants, cleaning them out, getting any hidden weeds that hid through last summer, getting all those things cleaned up, and then putting down a cap of mulch, which again I just showed you a minute ago, to prevent some of these summer weeds from germinating. It's also definitely time to be pruning back your grasses or grass-like plants. I just pruned this Carex back in one of those 3 pruning videos. You can run the lawnmower over your liriope. Some of your ground cover plants, this is the time of year you can go and prune them a bit, thin them out a little bit. I've got some St. John's wort over there that I did in that same video. And pretty much all of your grasses at this point, I'll go ahead and cut them back. One thing about when you're spreading mulch that I'd like to point out, my red bud, the graft on it is only about 2 inches above the ground. And when you're mulching around your plants, make sure that you're just really thin right near the base of them, okay? Don't pile this mulch, you know, way up on the stem. Don't do this. You know, what you see in a parking lot is 100% wrong, okay? That is a landscaper that doesn't know what they're doing. Make sure it's very thin right around the base of your plants. So don't bury them. So you can have it be thicker out from the plant, but definitely up near the plant. We don't want to be burying them, especially things that have grafts, like this red bud or Japanese maple, fruit trees, that kind of thing. Roses are grafted. Make sure you're not burying the graft, and just, again, thin right near the trunk. It stayed unseasonably warm through my fall into December, but January and February have been quite cool, or normal cool actually, so everything's very dormant. So what you're seeing here is a very dormant landscape. It's going to really come to life over the next 30 to 45 days, so make sure you're following along with the channel. I have thousands of bulbs, literally thousands, from this front garden to the back that I hope to show off. It is time to fertilize if you haven't yet. I've tried this year to do videos slightly earlier than the peak perfect time for me to be doing it. So I've pruned things a little earlier. I've fertilized a little earlier, just trying to give you guys a heads up on when to do them. But this is peak time to do organic fertilizers. You can do your containers, you can do your annuals, you can go ahead and do your vegetable garden if you've got it composted before you even plant the plants. You can do your shrubs, trees, anything that's in the ground, even your lawn if you're using organic fertilizers. If you're using inorganic fertilizers or synthetic fertilizers, you may want to wait a while, because those things will, right out of the gate, potentially push your plants, and we don't want to push them ahead before we get a frost. And that's one other thing on thinking about. I had to cover some plants early in January because it was so warm in December. They still had some new growth on them. But for the last 6 weeks or so, I haven't really covered anything because everything's been dormant. My next opportunity where I may have to cover a few things is if these plants start waking up here in March. If I go on a 3-week run where there's just no cold nights, this stuff's going to wake up, and there's probably a few things here or there that I'll have some sheets ready for, some towels ready for, that I can put some covers on some things if I need to, right before my average last frost date there in April. I never really cover lawns on this channel. I've got a zoysia lawn in the front and a zoysia lawn in the back. The back's a little bit too shady and it's not working out as well as I had hoped. This front one looks great. Does have a few weeds in it. There's some poana right here. This is such a small lawn spot for me that I can actually just go in here and pull literally 50 weeds that are out here in just a little while and be done with it. Make sure if you have henbit and chickweed, wherever it is, and almost everybody watching has some henbit or chickweed in their lawn. Chickweed typically has a little white flower on it. Henbit will have that little bit of a purple flower on it. Make sure you're getting that out. Bed areas, lawn areas, wherever it is, before it seeds itself, and it seeds itself very prolifically. So does that poana. The little golf course nightmare grass. For anybody who's ever done golf course maintenance knows about this one. I've already fertilized the lawn. I'll probably do it again sometime later in the spring, but I don't use any chemicals out here. My dog's out here. I just don't want to. I know many of you, your lawn is the most important thing to you, and so it is time for pre-emergent herbicides and those kinds of things if that's what you do. But for me, again, I'll come out here, hand pull a few of these weeds and be done with it, and I fertilize it a couple times a year. I don't want to push it any more than that because I don't want to mow it any more than that, honestly. It is time to divide any perennials that you know where they are. If you still need to divide hosta, this would be the time of year to do that if you know you've got some overcrowded things. Speaking of overcrowded things, if your bulbs are coming up like daffodils and there's like 20 of them in one little cluster, mark where those are so that let them bloom, let the foliage die back, and then if you've marked them, you'll know where to go in and dig them out later. After the foliage dies back, you can come in and divide them and spread them around, give them to neighbors, that kind of thing. But make sure you have, all the bulbs that I have coming up out here will have some sort of tag, or they'll be drawn on a map or something like that, just so that I know in the future where they are. I'm not destroying them when I'm planting over them, and I can divide them later. One additional thing on mulching is I did edge around the 2 turf spaces and along the paths before I put the wood chips in. So edging is a task that can be done and done more easily this time of year because the ground is slightly moist. The ground is moist, but my containers are drying out frequently. We've gotten very superficial rains the last month. To the west of us, they've gotten lots and lots of rain, but for some reason, it seems to be kind of superficial. Again, it's been enough to keep the soil moist, but my containers, I can see this cryptomeria today is actually dry and I need to water it. So do be checking on container plants if you still have container plants outside. That's something you want to be subscribed to the channel for, because I'm going to be talking a lot about these things that I've had in containers now for a year or two, all need bigger containers. So there's going to be a big video on replanting in containers and knocking some of the soil off, refreshing containers. Got lots of plants already that I'm purchasing, and I'm running out of space in this small urban lot, small for, you know, for my area, urban lot. So I'm collecting things. Some things can go in the ground now, some things can't, but I'm trying to find spaces. There's a lot of planning that goes on for me in the month of March on where I'm going to be putting things. How can I add things to this garden? How can I make it more interesting than it was last year? How can I be experimental, you know, but not make giant mistakes along the way. So there's going to be some spaces where I try some new annuals, try some new perennials, but then there'll be my go-tos, the ones that I really like every year, you know, going in as well, just to make sure that I don't, you know, I don't have a complete failure because something won't go completely the way I plan it, because a lot of my annuals are done from seed. Some of those, most of those will be successful. Some of them won't. I've put up a couple seeding videos recently if you want to learn how to go about that. Definitely clean out any bird houses from last year. I did that in last month's video, my blue bird house over here. Or add a bird house to your yard, add a bird feeder to your yard. Birds are an important part of your garden. And I know that'll sound strange, but I have robins in this backyard and other things in this backyard flipping these leaves over, doing hard work for me all winter long, eating insects and things that would be damaging my plants later in the season. So they are welcome into this landscape because they are an integral part of the natural system, the way the natural system works. If you've got an irrigation system, getting it ready to go, or if you're thinking about putting in irrigation as you're planting new beds, this is the time of year to be thinking about that. Make sure your tools are ready to go. You get your oil changed in your lawnmower and that kind of thing. It won't be too far, you know, we're not too far out from needing to use it at this point, get the blade sharpened, that kind of thing. And just generally beyond that, for me, again, it's about planning. You know, I've got these things I need to find homes for, and I continue even after 36 years of doing this to learn. And I learn by going to arboretums, botanical gardens, plant sales, talking to other gardeners. You know, I learn something new every day, and that's important, and it helps me on a year-to-year basis to you know, figure out some new things and some interesting things, and to continue to keep my own garden interesting. So thank you guys for following along and watching these videos, the monthly update videos. And make sure you're subscribed, because during the month of March, you're going to see a lot of these things in action that I've just talked about. Thanks for watching.